Welcome to the worst of the best podcast. You wanted the best. Well, they didn't freaking make it! So here's what you get. From Canada, Ryan and
Jason. Welcome to the Worst of the Best podcast. I am your host, and with me today, returning host, guest host, whatever you want to call it, but always my brother, Jason. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, let's get right into it. We're doing another Metallica episode, and this is something that's near and dear to both of our hearts as brothers and back in our youth. This is a band that we kind of experienced together and shared many interests regarding this band together and experiences with this band together. And I mentioned in my Master of Puppets album that I did with Doug, check that out if you haven't already. If you're coming onto this episode because you saw we're doing Metallica and then you're like, whoa, they did Master of Puppets as well. It doesn't really matter which order you listen to it, even though Ride the Lightning did come up before Master of Puppets. I think the discussions are irrelevant to the chronological order of the albums to a certain degree. If you heard that one, I'll try my best not to repeat myself too much. I did mention in that episode, Jason, that you were the brother, or essentially the person, that I'm pretty certain introduced me to Metallica, or to the point where your love of them and your love of Megadeth got me on that heavy metal train that I wasn't on before you. I think you were the pioneer in our family of that music. I think it might have been, so was it Megadeth that you got into first, or was it Metallica?
It might have been Megadeth. It might have been Rust in Peace.
Yeah, that's what I think, yeah.
I'm pretty sure now that it was Rust in Peace first. Yeah, then Metallica later. And not far later.
No, yeah.
You know, we started dipping our toes into the metal scene early 90s. As far as the history of Metallica and Megadeth, we were a little bit later on the scene because they were both established artists. We were introduced to Megadeth with Rust in Peace, and then Metallica with And Justice for All. So it's at that time era that we started to listen to them then. And then as you start introducing yourself to the back catalog of these bands.
Yeah.
And then move forward with them.
If you haven't already, those who are listening to this episode, check out Jason and I talking about Megadeth's album. We did an episode on Rust in Peace and Countdown to Extinction. That was you, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So I saw you look at the camera like, oh, did I get the wrong?
I'm actually wondering, did we do 3 Megadeth?
No, just the 2.
Just those 2. Okay.
Yeah. Do you remember that it was you that introduced me to specifically to the album Master of Puppets? So we already had Justice for All. We were both listening to it ad nauseum. I was listening to it daily on my paper route. It was just on nonstop repeat. Justice. I mean, that album was just, it was just like, it was nonstop. It never skipped a song. It was just incredible. And then, like you're saying, we went to the back catalog. And keep in mind, listeners, Jason and I were born in 75 and 77 respectively.
73.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking of Ruben's age. My bad. Yes, so you were 73, I was 75. There was no internet at the time, of course, when this came out. So it was kind of like word of mouth. We got metal magazines. And so we kind of had to do your own little kind of research. And sometimes bands would say on their albums, check out our other albums from and they show the titles, or we go to the record store and just look at the back early releases. So
these songs were not on the radio. These albums were not on the radio. They're not radio-friendly songs as far as the genres that you would hear.
Yeah.
Plus, the lengths of many of these songs.
Yeah, they're too long for radio play.
Yeah.
Metallica was word of mouth, and that was quote unquote the underground, because it was just people saying, hey, check it out. Here, I'll lend you a tape. I'll make you a tape. Here, check them out. And they toured and toured and toured.
And they had no videos until one.
Right. Specifically with the back catalog, it was always interesting when we were teenagers discovering a band like Metallica and kind of being like treated like, oh, you know, we're big Justice for All fans, of course. We're like, oh, they have 3 other albums, studio albums before this one. That's weird. And we go back, and it's kind of weird to listen to these quote unquote older albums, which at the time was only like 3 or 4 years previous. When you're 14 or 15 years old, thinking back to when you're 11 or 12, it seems like eons ago. But now it's like, it's just weird to think that they pumped out so much in so little time. Jason, they were so young when they made this album. James, Lars, and Kirk were 21. Cliff Burton was 22.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, I'm looking here, like the album coming out in 84. 84.
Yeah, I know. It's weird.
I was like 11.
So you're 11 when it came out, and I was 9. Yeah.
Yeah, at least my 11th year. Yeah.
You know, when you're 15, 13 years old, whatever it is, you look back at being 9 or 11, you think that's eons ago. I remember even thinking then, oh, man, we're listening to an album from the early 80s metal or whatever. It was kind of weird. But now it just blows my mind how old this album is. Quick math here, it's 37 years old. Boy.
And in many ways, it could have been done today.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're 21, and here we are 37 years later, and it literally sounds like they could have made this yesterday.
That's why this album and Master, and in many ways, Kill 'Em All. Kill 'Em All was, of course, their debut album. And I know this is blasphemy because there's a lot of people who there's people. Here, the funny thing about Metallica is with every album they've ever released, they have haters. Even from day one, they have such divisive, angry fans. And so maybe because of you and I coming in, I guess, mid-career in a way, or early to mid-career, we were introduced to Justice. We went back and listened to the back catalog, and then we were still fans. I know you have been, and I've been fans of their Load, Reload. It doesn't bother us. Like, I don't get weirded out about the haircuts or the change to some hard rock sounds versus, because as they've aged, we've aged, right? And their interests have changed. What they want to do has changed. Back in the day, Jason, when they released Ride the Lightning, there were fans of Kill 'Em All who thought they went a little bit soft, with the Fade to Black. But when they did the Fade to Black song, there were people who were upset that they were doing a power ballad. They were criticized for it even back then.
Well, as I was re-listening to this album this week and kind of refreshing my mind as to what I will pick as the song, what struck me was the maturity between Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning. There is a leap in their sound and in their cohesive sound for an album. And if you think about the sound that they have for Ride the Lightning, and then there's a cohesive sound for Master of Puppets, and there's a cohesive sound for And Justice for All. Kill 'Em All it's a little bit bouncing around a bit.
Yeah.
It's not as cohesive. This is a very, very cohesive sound. The lyrically is light years ahead. Ride the Lightning, light years ahead from Kill 'Em All. It's not just a refresh. It's a pretty big evolutionary jump in their sound and their approach to their music.
Well, it's interesting that the jump from Kill 'Em All to Ride, I think it's the same jump we experienced from Ride to Master.
Yes. Yeah, I've been thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's still a lot of thrash in this album. The first track, Fight Fire with Fire, introduces that right away. But again, for our Metallica listeners, people who are huge fans, Jason and I, we've been listening to these guys for 3+ decades, as we've just said. But even because of that, I don't know everything. And I'm not one of those guys that knows everything. What did James Hetfield eat for a sandwich when he was recording Ride the Lightning? There's people who know that kind of stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're coming to this...
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm not going to pretend I'm a historian. I approach these as a fan, an observer of their music. We've been to many of their concerts. Right now, I couldn't even tell you how many times I've seen them 6, 7 times, maybe even more. 9?
Probably, yeah. You've done security at their shows too.
Yeah. We are fans who, for the most part, grew up with them, but we're not historians. So let's not get hung up on those little nitty gritty, petty.
Absolutely. This is an episode that we'll be talking about the music and kind of what it means to us, just how the song makes us react, because how this works, if you're a first time listener to our show, we take the best of something. Metallica, I would almost say every one of their albums is, to me, it's a highlight for different reasons. So, but a lot of Metallica historians and fans would argue that even their first 3 albums, specifically Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning, are their top albums. It's an argument for another day, but this is a top tier thrash metal pioneer album, no matter what side of the fence you are on regarding Metallica today or yesteryears. This album has been cataloged as an album that has stood the test of time, quite frankly. But just because something is the best of, or something that is of the highest quality, not everything is created equal. So this album has 8 tracks. Not every track is a 10 out of 10. Or even if every track was a 10 out of 10, there's still going to be something subjectively that one person might enjoy more than another. So that's all we're doing today, ladies and gentlemen, is Jason and I, independent of each other. I don't know his pick. He does not know mine. But there's probably a song, I would assume, well, there has to be because that's the name of the show, that is the worst of the best regarding this album. There is a song that has been that way for me for 3.5 decades. We'll get to it when we get to it. During our discussion, we're going to play little bits of each song we just do the beginning, just so if you're not familiar with the album, it gives you a bit of a taste of what the album sounded like, what music sounded like, what the energy was like. And of course, we encourage everyone to listen to the whole album or to any songs that they want to hear the whole song of. But this is not a album listen episode. This is not a whole song listen. This is just us saying, hey, this is this part, this is that part of each song, what we think of it. We'll give little anecdotes throughout the way. So here we go. Without further ado, the first track is Fight Fire with Fire. This is right out of the gate the most thrash song. I think this is their segue, and they did this for Battery. We talked about this for Master of Puppets. I think they opened this with a little bit of, don't worry, thrash fans. We know we're going to sound a little bit different on this album. We know we got a little bit of a different sound, a little bit more polished sound. It's not as thrashy as our Kill 'Em All. We're trying to, expand ourselves as musicians. But they gave us a thrash metal song right off the bat. But before it goes into the thrash metal, it starts with an acoustic little ditty. Let's check it out. Now, before it kicks in, I shared this story on the Master of Puppets episode where I was at the concert. I think it was my third time seeing them live. This would have been, I think it was 1990. It would have been 2000 because my wife at the time was pregnant with Logan. And she wasn't a big Metallica fanatic, but she, of course, knew, some of their slower stuff, more recent stuff, Black Album stuff. So she just came to the concert with me. But she was pregnant with Logan, who's now 21. And she heard the beginning part of the song. And she turned to me and said, "Oh, this is a nice song." I just turned and said, "Well, just wait 10 seconds." And this is what she heard when that 10 seconds was over.
Love it. I love that. I remember listening to that acoustic kind of Led Zeppelin beginning, and then it just goes into that thrash. There was a power to that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should know that all lyrics were written by James Hetfield. Like Master Puppets, both Lars and James, they're the composition dudes. They go through all their boxes of tapes at the time, riffs that they had, piecing together, hey, let's build songs off this, build songs off that. They're the bosses. And I know a lot of people criticize Lars for his rhythm theory not being as good as Neil Peart's from Rush. Like, to me, I've always loved Lars. I love all the band members, and I think Lars is eccentric. I think he's equally as eccentric as he is talented, as he is weird. And that's what I love about him. He's fidgety, he bounces off the chairs when he does interviews. But the guy's passionate about this band, and without his passion, where he feels the band could have gone, we wouldn't have him today. He was a promoter of the band. James was very quiet, very shy. He didn't want to do interviews. Lars was the front man, truly, of getting this band out there, promoting them, getting them on tours and circuits and what have you. So I know people sometimes criticize his drum technicality. I'm like,
I know. I've heard, he's a horrible drummer. He might screw up live like anybody would live. From time to time. I mean, even the greatest athletes screw up from time to time.
Of course.
Under pressure or just...
fatigue?
Yeah. He sounds fine to me. Yeah, I couldn't do what he's doing. I enjoy the experience of their music, specifically live. I enjoy the experience too much to try and find fault in what I'm enjoying. Doesn't seem to serve a purpose to me, but...
To me, it does.
Yeah.
We've always known Metallica as being like you and I when we got into them. They've always been, I guess, successful in the sense that like, oh, they've always just been Metallica. They've just now, they're mega millionaires today, and rightfully so. They've been doing this for 4 decades. They tour the world. They've multi-million sales. They've done it all.
They're as big as you can get.
Yeah. But back when they wrote this album, it's hard to, yes, they were young, but not only were they young, they were poor. The record companies were poor that they were working with here. Megaforce Records was the record that they recorded this album with. They didn't have the funds for this. They were sleeping in the studio. They didn't have money for a hotel. It's just weird to think they were a garage band still when they wrote this album.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I love these stories of the bands back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, where they really did have to fight their way to the top, like AC/DC says. There's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. Many of these bands did not have the first your YouTube star, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
They were completely unknowns to the world, and they had to claw their way to the top to become known. That kind of, rocky storyline of these bands that we've enjoyed is part of the lore and what makes even the stuff even more rewarding to listen to.
Well said. During the recording of this album too, they opened for a band called Raven. It's just funny. They were opening for them and Anthrax were both opening for this band who is still together today, but they were like a metal band from England called Raven. I kind of feel bad for those bands because like there was a time that Metallica opened up for them, but now it's
they probably watched them open up and go, we're going to be completely eclipsed.
There has to be that. There has to be a bit of them say, oof, they're bringing a whole. You'd have to be blind. Because they were playing this music at those opening shows.
Yeah. What
I also like about Metallica, their lyrics aren't about gratuitous sex and stuff like that. Even though their music might be, to some listeners' ears, like harsh or whatever. But this is talking about nuclear warfare, talking about humanity being destructive with their behavior, blow the universe into nothingness, nuclear warfare shall lay us to rest. Of course, this was a lot of the fears of the 80s. Just talking about how people don't settle down. We're going to have our lungs filled with gas and hot winds of death.
Yeah, and the other thing they're not talking about is wizards and slaying dragons.
Hey, come on, Ronnie James Dio, come on.
I was thinking the same. That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, even a lot of those early metal stuff, they're like, it's fantasy novel lyrics, which they obviously have their place because there's very successful artists who participated in that. But they stayed very clear from those things, kind of political, emotional turmoil, political turmoil, global turmoil, even family turmoil. So yeah, it's a very different approach to their lyrics, which again, I think helps them stand the test of time. It doesn't age the way that some of those other types of lyrics might age.
Good, I like it. The next song is the title track, Ride the Lightning. James, singing, a 21-year-old here singing, and it should be noted that after Kill 'Em All, well, he didn't want to sing during Kill 'Em All for that album, but he did, and during the recording of Ride the Lightning, it was not his intention or his desire to be the singer for the band. He was really uncomfortable at the time being both the rhythm, sometimes lead guitars, but basically the rhythm guitars, lyric writer. He didn't want to sing. He didn't feel comfortable with his vocals and singing in general. So you know who they asked to sing for the band at the time?
I'm sure if you tell me.
Yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot. This is also a question for the listener too. John Bush of Anthrax and Armored Saint fame
Oh,
John Bush was specifically asked to sing for Metallica, and he turned it down at the time because the Armored Saint at that time were doing pretty well. I mean, they're still currently a band, and he still performs with them. John Bush then did 4 albums with Anthrax, speaking of Anthrax. But at the time, you have to keep in mind, these guys are living in the studio, right? And Armored Saint was already not living in the studio. I can see John just saying, I got a get going here. I'm not going to leave my band and to sing for you guys. But what an interesting journey that would have been. And people, if you want, I would recommend when Metallica did their 30th anniversary performance in front of some fans, John Bush came and sang The Four Horsemen with Metallica. It was really cool to see what could have been type performance. It was really fun. And they mentioned the story on stage. So it's all good. They're all, of course, friends and get along well. It's just at the time he's turned it down. But John Bush is singing there. Yeah, I know.
I'm sure he's thinking, oh, what could have been?
Mm-hmm.
I could have about 3 more zeros at the end of my bank statements.
Oh, I'm sure he has. I'm sure he's thought. I mean, you'd be an idiot not to think, had I stuck around. But you never know. Maybe it was the James singing. You know what I mean? You never know what connects with fans. Maybe it was the James singing that.
Okay, well, number one, he's the main lyricist.
Yeah.
I always find the lyricist will sing their own song probably better than anybody else will sing it. It's like when, I'm not sure if you listen to audiobooks. You listen to audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks. Typically, I prefer the author, not always, but often I'll prefer the author to read their own book because they will know in their own minds where they wanted things to be emphasized or how it's to be phrased, the pacing of the book or the story,
right,
and the information that they're sharing. So I think at the end of the day, if James is writing these lyrics, he's connecting, right? He's connecting with his own message.
It's always better when the subject of the biography, if they're alive and well, do the reading of the biography. Like Jerry Seinfeld's done a couple of books. It wouldn't be anywhere funny if somebody else was reading Jerry's voice. Right, exactly. It has to be his voice. The song "Ride the Lightning" is about a convicted murderer who's been sent to the electric chair, even though he didn't commit the crime. So the lyrics that we're hearing in the song is what's going through the person's mind. The name of the song came before anything else. That was given by Kirk Hammett. He was reading the book Stephen King's The Stand, which I've read. It's a great book. This is what Kirk Hammett had to say to Rolling Stone. He said, there was this one passage where this guy was on death row and he was waiting to, quote, ride the lightning. I remember thinking, wow, what a great song title. I told James, and it ended up being the song and the album title. So that's Kirk's contribution.
That's actually a very cool story.
Yeah.
Amazon Prime just came out with a short series, The Stand.
Yeah, great book. The TV show, of course, had mixed reviews, as every Stephen King does, because he's such a prolific writer. It's always better if you don't know the book. You probably enjoyed the show more than those who read the books. Okay, there's a transition here in the song that I really, really like. It slows down a little bit. You get some Kirk's amazing guitar solo work, and then it kicks into like a thrash guitar solo. It's just insane speed. This part here. So it's hard to stop when it starts. I love that solo. You think, oh, there's a pretty good speed solo going on here, and then it slows down just a second, and then it just ramps up, like the energy, the lightning, how he's really riding that charge. Yeah.
Yeah. Kirk Hammett is a phenomenal guitarist. He might not come straight to mind for many people, and he gets lost in the mix of the size and power of Metallica as a band. But boy, is he good. Unbelievably good.
There is not a bigger metal band in the world. Who's bigger?
No.
Kirk, for some reason, it's odd. I think it's because he's so quiet and so, I wouldn't say humble, but he is humble, but he's so unassuming in some ways. He just...
Yeah, he's pretty soft.
Soft. He's soft-spoken. He is very, very childlike when he speaks, very soft-spoken, very whispery. Boy, his fingers can just... He has a lot of soul, and his role in the band is the lead guitarist and solo writer. It's James and Lars with the riffs, the composition, James with the lyrics and singing. They do go to Kirk. Hey, dude, you're the solo guy. And it's all Kirk. He comes up with these amazing solos, yeah.
Especially when you watch them live, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow... Look at him go.
Yeah, you're right. He's not talked about enough, even though he is.
No. Listen to that song, 2021.
Yeah, I know. I don't get it. I look back at the ages.
21 is just like, wow.
Yeah. And it's original material. People often say, oh, he's not the best guitarist because, the technical this or that. It's one thing to watch a 14-year-old on YouTube play Eruption or to play Ride the Lightning or whatever, and you think, oh, well, maybe it's not that hard. It's not about the difficulty of the composition. It's the fact it's in a composition. They wrote it. I don't care that people can play it. It doesn't mean it's difficult or not difficult. The idea is what you just heard and what we're about to hear in other past episodes or whatever your artist. That's great that people cover songs and enjoy the music. That's wonderful. But I hate when people say because a 14-year-old can play it and maybe it's not that difficult. That doesn't mean anything. They didn't write it. That 14-year-old didn't write this album.
Yes, it's the fact that they've come up with these things.
Yes.
The imagination and the talent to put them together and put in a studio an album. Yes.
And it's connected.
Me, it's always, yeah.
There's a reason why we're talking about this 37 years later. And the reason why it's rated so high as it is because, they wrote this. This is their composition. There's no cover songs on this album. Lately, I've been making that point when people talk about, oh, Van Halen or Eddie wasn't the best guitarist. He wasn't the first one to tap. And I'm like, yeah, but the songs that he wrote, and it connected to a lot of people. So that's the point. The point is he put together the songs that connected, not about being the first or the fastest. Yeah. The next song, Jason, this is not my worst pick. And I say this because I have something to say about the song. For Whom the Bell Tolls, in all of Metallica's catalog, this is a hot take maybe, or maybe not. Maybe people agree with me. For Whom the Bell Tolls, it has one of the best intros and build-ups of all Metallica songs.
Yeah.
But it has the most nauseating, boring outro. It's insane that they can have a song that it builds and builds and builds, goes into the chorus. Funny enough, there's no guitar solo in the song. It has an outro that is long and boring, and I skip it every time.
Interesting.
And I wonder if there's another Metallica. So this is my challenge to anyone that actually goes on the social medias. Let us know in the comments, either on Twitter or on our Facebook page or wherever. Is there another Metallica song that has such an amazing intro with a 180 outro?
To me, it's a bit of a hot take. I hear what you're saying. I have felt similar. I just haven't put it into
We're going to contrast it right now.
Opinionated about it, but yeah, okay.
So here's the intro.
Yeah.
Great grooving bass by Cliff, eh?
Exactly. Yeah. I absolutely love that. They just the grind, the marching.
Yeah. This is, you can picture those soldiers marching off to war for Who the Bell. Yeah, over the hills and stuff.
And like you say, Cliff Burton's bass in there just
a crazy groovy bass. And it was actually Cliff Burton. It was his push to change the sound from Kill 'Em All. He felt that, hey guys, we can do more than just the thrash. it makes sense with songs like this. With you hear that it's almost like a groovy.
If anything, Kill Them All is a little bit anemic. They thickened up the sound.
It's much thicker.
They filled it out.
It's heavier, less thrash, more heavy. Yeah,
right.
Now it amps up just a little bit more coming up. Big, huge intro before the lyrics kick in. It pretty much just repeats now that chorus and time marches on. Incredible A+ intro. I mean, it's basically 2 minutes of build up. James comes in, then there's no guitar solo, and then I'm just going to sample just a little bit of this kind of painstaking outro. It's just repetitive and nothing happens. And that was only 15 seconds. They do it for about a minute and a half. At the show, when they do it live, I know Lars likes it because he gets to stand up. He does his little, he does his stand up and bashes the drums. And he like Lars loves to stand up when he can. And
yes, this is actually quite a crowd favorite.
It is. Well, rightfully so, but I find the outro.
Yes, especially the beginning. And then I love the lyrics on this song are pretty strong. Like they're pretty powerful lyrics. Mm-hmm. Take a look to the sky just before you die. It's the last time you will.
Yeah. And then it echoes out. He does that echo out.
Yeah. Last time you will. I love the song, but you're right. That outro is a little bit weak for sure.
So according to Kirk Hammett, Burton regularly played the intro bass riff when the pair of them were hanging out in their hotel room. Cliff used to carry around an acoustic classical guitar that he detuned so that he could bend the strings. Anyway, when he would play that riff, I would think, that's such a weird atonal riff that isn't really heavy at all. Kirk goes on to say, I remember him playing it for James, and James adding that accent to it. All of a sudden, it changed. Hear James sing it. He kind of sings like, it's almost like he has this weird Cockney accent when he's singing it.
Sure, yeah.
It's such a crazy riff. To this day, I think, says Kirk, how did he write that? Whenever I hear it nowadays, it's like, okay, Cliff's in the house. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So obviously it's a fan favorite. So we actually owe Cliff the riff part of that. That's a Cliff riff. That's a Cliff riff build up. To this day, the boys, bless their hearts, they just miss Cliff so much, eh?
I suspect, yes. I mean, like any major loss in our lives, they're missed. And, there's going to be that hole that will never be properly filled. And maybe it just has a lot to do with what if Cliff was still around? What could have been?
Yeah.
Or what should have been, actually.
Of course, the song title was based from Ernest Hemingway's novel of the same name. But the first time this was ever in print that we can find was from a poem in 1623 by John Donne, who wrote, "Send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." And then Hemingway took that and named his book about the Spanish Civil War, the precursor to World War II. Yeah, cool stuff. So, Cliff, thank you, brother. We loved it. But there's been an age-old argument and discussion, alternate universe discussion, is what would Metallica sound like today had Cliff never died?
I suspect there's a few albums that would sound different.
I think there would be. All right. The next song is the one that divided fans right away from their Kill 'Em All. We talked about it before, Fade to Black. It's their first power ballad, as you could say. It's not a love song, but it's a ballad in the sense it's slower tempo, but it's that great build-up song. It has a slow beginning. I don't know why fans would cry foul here, but some of them did, because the outro to this song here's completely different than For Whom the Bell Tolls. The outro is A+.
Again, though, the maturity of the lyrics and the depth of what they're investigating philosophically or about life and how life is finite. I mean, speaking of Cliff Burton, life is finite. yeah, at some point along the way, we all do fade to black.
Yeah. I have lost the will to live. Nothing more to give. Now, before people start saying, oh boy, wow, James, he's 21 years old. What's he upset about? What's he worried about? Well, this song was written shortly after their equipment was stolen in 1984, and James Hetfield wrote the lyrics in response to one of his amps being stolen. Not only was this amp his favorite, but it was the first amp he ever owned, so it had a lot of sentimental value to him. So the song is about losing everything and wondering if it's worth going on.
Speaking of him singing and him being self-conscious about his singing abilities, he's singing here.
Yeah, and you can tell he's lowering his voice. He has a high octave in his younger years, but you can tell he's not trying hard, but he's making a concerted effort that he's lowering the tone for the song. Yeah,
the words are drawn out.
Yeah,
it's beautiful, actually.
Well, and you can see why it might have jaded fans. Just what this?
And maybe for us coming in later and listening to a back catalog, we had so many songs to catch up with. This would have been one song out of 30 rather than one song out of 8.
Yeah, we were used to that as well with the song 1. We already were used to the slow beginning build-up.
Yeah. To hear one or two slower songs along the way in a mix of 30 others would not have shocked us or I would not have thought anything of it. I'm really enjoying his singing here.
Jason Newsted, who replaced Cliff Burton, noted that this was his favorite Metallica song and that it had a lot of sentimentality to him. And at the end of Jason Newsted's final performance while playing the song, he was in tears.
Sure, yeah. It's that powerful. Lyrically, it's deep. I mean, obviously him losing his amp, it inspired him. But this definitely isn't about the...
No, it's not about... It's the idea about loss.
Inspired him to go a little bit deeper. Yeah, it's strong. It's a strong song.
In the last two verses, the person, the narrator in the song, realizes life is too good to let go, but by that time, it's too late. No one but me can save myself, but it's too late. And then the next lyric that comes right after what we just heard, or what I just read. Yesterday seems as though it never existed. Death greets me warm. Now I'll just say goodbye. Goodbye. And then it kicks into that incredible solo outro. And when we hear a little bit of Kirk's solo work, he improvised in the studio, the solo. And as it went on, what we're hearing is a bit of improvisation from Kirk. He was just thought incredibly depressing thoughts during the solo to get the sound that he got from it. This is the power ballad for Ride Lightning, and Welcome Home Sanitarium is the kind of the power ballad for that album. And just like a Welcome Home, Fade to Black has the danger of getting boring. It runs into the danger of maybe being overplayed at concerts and be boring. But for whatever reason, well, the reason is it's an amazing song. It doesn't ever get boring.
It's the depth of the lyrics.
Yeah.
It's a story as old as mankind. It's something that we all might struggle with from time to time.
I wonder if you've truly lived life, if you have wondered if it's worth to carry on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right. So we all have those moments, right? At some point, we grapple with this idea. What was it all for? What is it that I'm supposed to be striving for? It's a story as old as time. That's why it will not go old. He sings it very nicely. And that transition to the end, the way that that last verse is sung, kind of that feeling of anguish.
All right. Next song, side 2. Flip over your LP. We've got the song Trapped Under Ice.
I do own the LP.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Vinyl. Nice.
I enjoy vinyl.
Say, Jason, are you ready to flip it over?
Yep. The
solo work in by Kirk, I love it. 30 seconds in, we're hearing a solo right off the bat that there's probably guitar
blistering.
players. Yeah,
it's a blistering solo.
There's probably players that wish they could have done that solo once in their career. You know what I mean? Like, just right. Oh, hey, let's just throw this in before James starts singing, and it's just like, oh, and then it goes with another guitar solo. It's a really fun little song, and there's nothing really overly thought out regarding the meaning of the song. It's literally about somebody trapped under a layer of ice. Desperately trying to live, but nobody can hear his screams because he's trapped under ice. It's also a metaphor for the pain and suffering that people can feel, possibly a result of profound loneliness or alienation. But
I'm thinking depression.
Yeah, sure. You're trapped under a feeling of emotion. I've always listened to the song literally. It's just a scary.
Yes, that's the way I've listened to it too. I just got caught up in an avalanche, and I'm truly stuck in ice, and I'm kind of suffocating or slowly fading out, and I have no way to reach out for assistance. Nobody knows I'm in this position. I'm dying alone. It's always been a kind of a scary thought.
Oh, the way it's played and the way James sings it does have that panic.
Yeah, it's a very panicked feeling. Wasn't my favorite song when I was growing up.
The idea when this was made, back when LPs were being made regularly for bands, this was definitely a good way to begin the side 2, because you're like, it's another like Fight Fire with Fire energy type song.
Sure.
It's a bit of thrash again. It's like, okay, guys, we just gave you Fade to Black. Now we're going to give you kind of a, headbanger, so to speak.
I would like to know when it was written. I don't know if you have any info on that. I'm curious to know if it is kind of a carryover from Kill 'Em All, because it has that more thinner kind of sound, thinner guitar solo sound.
That's a good call. I don't know. I don't have any information on that off the top of my head. So next song, well, speaking of being trapped, ironically, the next song is called Escape.
I never connected the two. One's being trapped and then your escape.
Yeah, the escape. Yeah, and then the one after that is Creeping Death. So maybe they didn't make it after all. Maybe that has nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do with it. But it is kind of an interesting trapped under ice and then the escape. Yeah. It's interesting with this song. I always found with the chorus, it's a very different sounding chorus than all the other songs. It almost has like a melody type chorus, or even James singing. You could almost, if you changed the guitar work or something, almost like a pop song type sound to it. Very radio friendly type chorus sound. If you take away the guitar sound.
Sure. I'm kind of reading the lyrics here as we were going along, and he's 21 here, right?
Yep.
So he's talking about growing up, leaving the home, maybe referencing some rough spots in his youth, getting away from the pressures of expectations from his parents. I'm just guessing.
Right.
But it seems obvious to me that's I know better and I'll be better off without my parents' influence. The natural transition from being a teenager to adulthood. Makes me wonder if Trapped Under Ice previous song is him feeling trapped in a home environment that he wasn't.
I think he might have had a good relationship with his mom. I think, or no, he didn't. The song, the God That Failed, was about the fact that God didn't save his mom from cancer or something like that.
Oh, he might love his mom, but it doesn't mean that the family or home dynamics were all that positive. Anyway, I don't want to project that his home life was horrible.
But if it wasn't him, I'm sure somebody in the band or people he knew. It was, and they were, like you said, they were young. They started playing when they were teenagers. They were already playing in bands. Idea of these young teenagers already they were very heavy to alcohol at the time, so they left the home drinking and playing in bands. So who knows?
It's just teenagers in general. I mean, most of us, we want to break free from our home environment. We want to break out onto our own, be our own people. He's obviously referencing, don't tell me what to do. I don't care now because I'm on my side. I see through you. Feed my brain with your so-called standards. I mean, it sounds like a little bit of a pushback again, a little bit of rebellion.
There's a moment that they thought they were done with the album. So they came to Lars and said, look, we need one more song. You guys need to record one more song. The album isn't finished. So this is where the studio comes in and says, you guys don't have enough here. It's 7 songs. You need an 8th song. James is like, what? So they wrote this last minute. This was one of those songs that was written in the studio. Just like, okay, here you go. Here's your 8th song.
Interesting.
Kirk also said the reason why they don't play this live, it's in the key of A. They just find that the key of A doesn't work really well for the band for one reason or another.
Interesting.
So for those who are musically minded, might know what Kirk's talking about.
I have heard that James typically sings in E. Typically, again, I'm not a musician. I don't know what that really means. Right. And I could be wrong, but I remember much of their music is in around E because that's James' vocal ability.
And Kirk said that playing this song is more of a novelty than anything else.
Interesting. I wonder how many times they have played it live.
There's probably somewhere where we could Google that.
I've never seen it live.
No. All right. The next song is, speaking of live, this Creeping Death. From this album, Ride the Lightning's played quite a bit. Fight the Fire sometimes. I mean, I saw it played live, but not as much anymore. The concert staples are definitely For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, and Creeping Death. But I swear, Jay, when we saw them live, we also saw them play Call of Cthulhu, the last song. I think we saw that too when we were live. I think they played all their instrumentals when we saw them in 1990 for the first time because they played a 3-hour show. Go back and look at the set list for that and find out. The next track is Creeping Death, fan favorite. Everyone knows it.
It's probably close to one of my most favorite songs that they've ever done. I absolutely love this song.
And what I love about it too, it's biblically accurate. The song is about the children of Egypt when the Pharaoh had the children of Egypt and wouldn't let them go from Moses' peoples. The plagues were come, and finally the last plague was the angel of death going door to door and killing firstborn son.
A little bit of nostalgia here. Jason Newsted really pushed this song to a new level live. If you ever watch it live and he was able to become more active on stage, his little contributions to this song live, every time I listen to the song, I think of him and his contributions.
Yeah, because when it comes to the die,
and they extend that die die. And then I won't say it, but the way he finishes off the die, his last die, little
great.
expletive, puts an exclamation mark on this
interesting side chapter from Metallica's career, the Jason Newsted side chapter. It's too bad. It's too bad it didn't work out for him. James is king. I'm sorry. It's just the way it goes. Yeah. He wasn't happy about it. If you're in Metallica, that's all you're doing. That's the way James is. So
I can listen to that all day.
Yeah, me too. The part that Jason was talking about is right here. Jason Newsted would get the crowd going. They say the crowd would go, die. It's pretty fun to watch.
I implore anybody that's listening to this, find a live version with Jason Newsted. They extend this die chant, and the crowds absolutely love participating in this. And Jason brought it to a whole new level as well.
Now, did we see them live for the first time in 91 or 92?
I believe the concert was 92, but it was for the album released in 91.
That's right. So I got it here, Jason. We saw them May 23rd, 1992. They played 23 songs, and that included the 10th song being a Justice medley. So they played more. Right. They played Eye of the Beholder, Black and Freight and Insanity, Justice for All. So that probably took 10 minutes there at least. So the songs they played at our concert, Jason: Enter Sandman, Creeping Death, Harvester of Sorrow, Welcome Home Sanitarium, Sad But True, Wherever I May Roam. That's the worst song. Sorry, give away for my Black album. Wherever I May Roam, bass solo. Through the Never, The Unforgiven, Justice medley. Drum solo, guitar solo. Nothing Else Matters, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, Whiplash, Master of Puppets, Seek and Destroy, One, Last Caress, Am I Evil, Battery, Stone Cold Crazy.
That's a really memorable show for us.
Well, we were front row for a little bit.
Wow. Like there was we started off, I think, on row 23.
No, we were row 4.
Was it 4?
Yes. We were fourth row. This was back in 1992. They had seats sort of, but they were like these benches that were nailed into a portable floor. And they were just like rows of benches. We're in our spot, like row 4 seat spot area 22 and 23, whatever it was. Yeah, it was me and Jason. I hear this like crunching, crazy metallic type bending sound and floor is shaking. And I turn over to my right. There's this big Harley Davidson riding biker dude, and he's about 3 or 4 rows back, and he's swinging back and forth the bench that he's on, ripping the hinges out of the floor. Back and forth. He's probably 300 pounds. I could see the bolts coming out, and he's tearing the bench off the floor. And everyone's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then everyone started tearing.
There was a pile.
There was a pile of chairs, benches, like
in the middle of the floor.
I'd be like, we don't need these stinking seating plans.
That was a really bad idea.
It was, because we knew the crowd was going to go crazy. There's no opening act. So they played a 3-hour show, no opening act. Lights went down. The music from The Good, Bad, and the Ugly comes on. The band's coming out to stage. The crowd's psyched up. And the moment the first chord of Enter Sandman kicked in, everyone was kind of sort of milling in their area. The moment the music kicked in, lights come on, Enter Sandman kicks in. Everyone from us behind me and Jason pushed to the front. And I'll never forget the feeling of my feet lifting off the ground. I was lifted off the ground by the swell of bodies, and I was slammed to the front of the barricade. I had to have my arm across my chest to avoid my ribs being cracked from the pressure of people pushing and shoving. I don't even think that song was over when Jason and I were already covered in sweat. The heat from the bodies. Now, speaking of Creeping Death, which we just heard, that was the second track played. I remember thinking I might make it to the third song, but I said, okay, I'll do this for this song. I can't remember how many songs I lasted because I had a girl on my back too. She was on my back. She was elbowing me in the side of my head to get to the front. I was like, what is going on? And like, I can't do 3 hours of this onslaught of physical violence. I was only like 15, 16 years old. But I remember being right in front of Jason Newsted. James Hetfield was there too. And James Newsted, he was already sweating. I will never forget his sweat from his long hair hitting me in the face. That's how close I was. It was insane.
Yeah. Remember when the first chords of Enter Sandman began? And like you say, like it just, this tidal wave of people picking us up. And the lady behind us yelling at me, can you sit down?
Oh, yeah. I think
remember?
Yeah.
And I turned around to her and I said, you have to tell the 15,000 people behind us to sit down. And that's the last I remember of her. And we were swept. It was a tsunami of people. And remember, you fell across one of the benches?
Yeah, my left leg started to bend sideways.
Yes.
And the panic, I was like, Jason, my leg's going to break. And obviously, I didn't have enough strength to push everyone. My leg was about to break.
You fell over the bench because we were being pushed like a tidal wave. Your leg going across that bench. And you saying that. And I looked down. And then I created like a human bridge over you to protect your leg from snapping.
I was so scared. I was so scared. It's going to break right now.
I thought literally your leg would have broken. So I created like a human bridge over your leg so you can kind of get your leg off from going across that bench. A few songs in, and then you were like, kind of helped escort you to the side. And you ended up staying on the side there.
You were like, I'm going back in. You're always crazy.
I went back
you're crazy.
in.
You've always been a bigger kid too. And like, Jason, you're crazy. But I wasn't worried about you at all because I just knew like you're just insane. And so like, well, he'll be fine. But yeah, all I did was I took one of the chairs from the pile, put the chair, and it stood on top of the chair. I was back about 20 feet. I was like, this is fine. I'm close enough.
Yeah.
And I was out of harm's way, and everyone that wanted to mosh and destroy each other where you were. I was like, you're insane.
I remember helping you like escort you to your spot where you ended up staying for the rest of the show, and then turning around, looking at that floor. It was unbelievable.
It was like an urban jungle. It was insane.
And the lack of oxygen on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
There was no oxygen.
But that was back in the day when concerts didn't feel safe.
No, that one wasn't.
That was insane, yeah. Think how young they were. They were only at this time, this is 92, this is 8 years, so they were just 29 years old themselves.
Wow.
I know.
That's unbelievable. Anyway.
All right, so here's that part really quickly, the die. That's awesome. I remember the part you're talking about now with Jason.
Yeah, Jason. Yeah, once you see it, I'll never get over that song.
That was great stuff. Yeah, so it doesn't get boring. It should be boring. No. It should get boring, but it's never feels overplayed. It's a crowd favorite. The crowd gets to do the die part, and
they extend that die.
Yeah,
like, it's a good, strong.
It's a good build
extension.
up. The whole crowd is doing it for about a minute and a half. It's just the whole crowd, and everyone just does. It makes me laugh because you have 20,000 people chanting "die." I don't know. It's such a feel good song.
Nothing brings a crowd together like chanting "die."
Ironically, calmed the crowd down at that point, probably because everyone had to stop. Okay, so the album closer, interesting enough, is what they would call an instrumental. And for the purpose of the show, we've said before with other album reviews that we've done is that instrumentals don't count for worst pick. Only if all members aren't involved. Make that clear. So the Call of Cthulhu, all members are involved. There's just no singing. This is a full track. Everyone's involved. So it could be up for worst song on the album, in theory.
Sure. Yep.
Love that part right there. That wow.
was space.
Yeah, space, yeah. Now, we talked about this on our Master Puppets episode, but it's worth repeating here. This is a song where you put these same key notes, musical notes, in a symphony. This is a symphony song, and this is very obvious why this song is played on their symphony and Metallica albums, S&M albums. There's a reason why this one fits so nicely. It's a symphony. It's just, it's symphony.
I mean, I'm not really a complete fan of these instrumentals, but it's probably their best one.
It's a tough call. Yeah, it's a good call. Yeah.
And the Cliff Burton's bass.
Yeah. That groovy, distorted.
Yeah, the distorted. I think it was on a wah pedal.
Yeah. Let's hear a little bit more here. It is an 8-minute song, but we'll just play a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. Incredible guitar work by Kirk. Yeah. Interesting choice, but a great choice to end the album with that. Call of Cthulhu. My mistake, I didn't hear this at that concert, but I swear I've heard them play this live at one of the 6 shows I saw them. I'd have to do some research. But well, that is the end of the album. Again, the tracks are Fight Fire with Fire, Ride the Lightning, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, Trapped Under Ice, Escape, Creepy Death, and The Call of Cthulhu. 1984. Incredible album. I think you and I will say this album stands the test of time. It pioneered a lot of bands and sounds. It's been imitated but never replicated. Jason, though, are all 8 songs created equal? Is there one song that, for you...
Easy.
Yeah, what if it's the same as mine? Which song for you is the worst of this album?
Yeah, this song can't escape my pick. Escape. It sounds like they phoned it in. I was talking to my business partner that I was going to be doing this podcast. I said escape. It just seems kind of boring-ish. Mm-hmm. The lyrics to me are a little bit lame and kind of immature in their tone. The struggle of a teenager, to me, that's what it sounds like to me. I could be projecting my own thoughts and feelings about what they were talking about. I have no idea. But it sounds like, oh, I'm a teenager breaking into adulthood and I know better than you. And so there. It doesn't really hold a lot of water for me. And it's interesting. Go to find out. They threw it in last minute.
You and I used to read many. Oh, my pick is the same. No big surprise there. But funny enough, it was that way for me from back in the day. I remember when I first heard it, I thought, oh, that's kind of a weird song, a different sound. Doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, the worst song on this album is much better than 99% of what's released today. Bands wish they could play this, compose this. But this does feel, knowing the history too, it makes kind of sense. Like, oh, we better throw something together. It does seem a little bit generic. James sings a little bit odd. He sings a little bit almost like with an English Cockney accent as well on that one. Of note, I swear I read this somewhere, heard this somewhere back in the day. I think James himself said he's not a fan of this song. Himself. That didn't change my feeling on the matter. I've liked things that people who've created don't like. I agree with James.
And he probably knows it was phoned in. They rushed it. Maybe they didn't even have time to really flesh it out completely. It would have been a really small album at 7 songs, considering it's almost Call of Cthulhu is a 9-minute song and the album's only 47 minutes long with Escape. I can see why the record company says, no, you need at least one more song. Can you imagine making an LP with 3 songs on one side and 4 on the other? And
yeah, there's nothing wrong with a catchy chorus, and that's not the problem with the song. It does have a mainstream sound. It's probably easier to digest as a modern day Metallica fan now than back then. I just think over the years they have done better melody songs. Better. You could argue this is their first Black Album song.
Yeah.
One day we should do our Black Album worst song. one day.
Oh yeah, we'll get there.
All right, Jason. Well, there you go. Remember, in front of every silver lining, there's a cloud.
And you can't escape it.
You can't escape it today, Jason. We found it together. We agreed. Side note, for a while there, Ride the Lightning was the one that I had a hardest time getting into, but over the time, it's built a lot. Side note, too, Dave Mustaine, that was his last credit song to help write.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I agree. Ride the Lightning was not. Maybe if we did this back in 1995.
Yeah, I would say, like late 80s, early 90s, I might have chosen Ride the Lightning.
Yes.
Interesting, yeah. But I love it now.
And maybe as we've gotten older and we're kind of past the stage of life that Escape sounds like it's writing about, I don't connect with the lyrics. I don't think the lyrics of that song have aged well.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem for me.
All right. Until next time, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Gamma Gator Productions.